Hello, everyone. Welcome to Halcyon. How are you doing? Come on, come on. I know it's rainy. Ready? How are you doing? Hooray! You might be used to hearing from me. I'm Kate Goodall. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Halcyon. But I'm actually super glad that I'm not doing the introductions today. I just get to sit and enjoy everyone. And I'm also really happy to have Brad Hawkins here from AB Bernstein to do the introductions. So Brad, I'm going to hand off to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Hawkins. I'm the director of the AB Bernstein Washington, D.C. region. I'm here in lieu of my colleague Best, who's a Halcyon board member who unfortunately got called out of town on some last-minute travel, but certainly happy to be here with a few colleagues who are a couple rows back there. So AB Bernstein is a proud supporter of Halcyon and the Fast Forward event series. The mission of Halcyon to support innovators and creators, and the Fast Forward series to highlight visionary women leaders is really important to us. The Bernstein diversity and inclusion are woven into the fabric of our culture. We're committed to building a workplace of diverse perspectives and talents that will lead us into the future to better the lives of our employees, clients, and communities, stakeholders in the community. So it's a privilege to partner with Halcyon in striving to reach many of our shared goals. So before I introduce our two guests today, just a quick plug for the next Fast Forward event on Wednesday, November 20th with Julia Smolansky. She is the president and CEO of Lifeway Foods, and hope you'll be able to join. I believe that's over the lunch hour. So for the conversation today, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Marla Beck and Alexa von Tobel. Both tremendously accomplished. I'll share a few highlights from their bios. Marla is the CEO and co-founder of Bluemercury, a local and iconic high-growth luxury beauty retail chain founded in 1999, widely recognized for disrupting the beauty retailing industry. And Macy's saw the value of that model and acquired them in 2015. Also a cosmetics brand developer, having co-founded M61 Laboratories in 2008, makers of M61 Skincare, and Loon and Aster Cosmetics. Prior to founding Bluemercury, she was a consultant at McKinsey, holds an MBA from Harvard, an MPA from the Kennedy School of Government, and a BA from Cal Berkeley. In 2014, she was appointed by the Harvard Business School as an entrepreneur in residence, and named as one of Goldman Sachs' 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. Very involved and quite active in the community, serving on numerous boards and currently living in Bethesda with her husband and 3 children. And Alexa von Tobel is the founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital, an early-stage technology venture fund founded actually earlier this year. I'm sure we'll hear much more about that and the progress they've been making. Prior to Inspired Capital, Alexa founded LearnVest in 2008 with the goal of helping people make progress on their money. After raising about $75 million in venture funding, they were sold and acquired by Northwestern Mutual in 2015, a couple days before the birth of her first child, and one of the biggest fintech acquisitions of the decade. Following that, she joined a management team at Northwestern, first as the chief digital officer, then assumed the role of chief innovation officer, through which she oversaw Northwestern's venture arm. In addition to founding Inspired Capital, Alexa is a New York Times-bestselling author of Financially Fearless and Financially Forward, and also hosts Inc.'s The Founders Project podcast. She attended Harvard College, Harvard Business School, settled in New York City, where she currently resides with her husband and 3 children. So that's it. Welcome you both to the stage.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So we are so lucky to have Alexa here because she is actually scheduled to speak at Fortune's Most Powerful Women's Conference tomorrow, and she carved time to come here and talk with us today. So I have to start by asking you, so you're 24 years old, you call and tell your parents you're dropping out of Harvard Business School to start a company. My parents would have skewered me, so I want to understand sort of that decision-making and why this opportunity, why you had to start this company.
So first of all, just so fun to see such bright faces in the audience because I was you on so many different occasions, and so I'll start just by saying that I have no special talents except just to work hard and to put my head down. In the fall of 2008, as the world was falling apart and we were entering the worst recession of 81 years, I had a big idea of building financial planning software. So think TurboTax meets financial planning for America. And I said to myself, I think this is probably the best time to launch a business like that, given the fact that the world is people are so nervous about people's wallets. And when I was in Harvard undergrad, I worked in the happiness lab, which is so random. And my mom kept being like, "What's this degree you're getting? Happiness?" But it was incredibly valuable because, and I learned this one thing, and I hope you all remember this. So they took 9-year-olds at the end of their life and asked them, "What would you change? What do you regret?" And what's really interesting is you never regret the things you do. You always regret the things you don't do. So the shots that you didn't take on goal, the big thing that you always wish you could go for, most of the things that you do, you've already kind of glossed over, but it's the big bets you didn't take. And so I always joke that 9-year-old Alexa sits on my shoulder, and when I was 24, that 9-year-old Alexa was really clear that if I didn't go do this right then, I was afraid I wouldn't have the courage to do it any other time. And my other kind of big motto is when everybody zigs, zag. And so the world was getting scary. Everyone was hiding money. I was like, this is the right time to go build a business because we're at the bottom. So it's like there's only one way it's up. So I dropped out and I took a 5-year leave of absence and moved to New York by myself at the age of 24 to start a business. So.
Okay, most people are not like you, but you do have a lot of budding entrepreneurs in the room and new entrepreneurs. So what was the first thing you did? And I know you went out for fundraising. She raised over $75 million, but let's go back to the beginning to start. So what did you do first? How did you get it going?
Yeah, so we'll take it like literally year by year. So essentially on our 5th birthday is when we got acquired. So the first year, it was so challenging. Every single day was about finding great people who, this person would say, you should go meet so-and-so. Maybe they'll be interested in your business. And I would meet them and they'd be like, nope, not interested, thank you. And I just kept chatting with people and eventually started finding people who really cared about financial literacy or really cared about building a great solution for America's wallets. And very slowly ended up collecting about $700,000. It was like one step at a time. And finally closed a seed round. And once I had that in place, then I could hire 2 or 3 people. Before that, I literally hired free interns. I was like, who wants to get real work experience? Because I need you to do real work, but the catch is it's free. And luckily, some great college students said, I need experience, and we'll come, and we'll just spend some time. And so that was basically how I begged, borrowed, and stealed to stand the company up. Then we applied for every award that was out there, and we ended up being a TechCrunch 50 company, which is kind of like, at that time, that was like the hardest award to go and be part of. And then they gave me a ton of free press when we launched. And very quickly, we ended up with a few hundred users, then a few thousand users. And then in the first month, 10,000 people had signed up for LearnVest, which, keep in mind, financial planning is like pretty boring. It's not like I was selling shoes or like great video content. Like I was like, come learn about your wallet. But people were showing up and I just knew something was there. So then we raised a $5 million Series A. Wow. And at that point, we had a bunch of interest and we had 6, 7, 8 term sheets. And we raised the capital and then we really got to work. So I always say it took about a year to like really get up and running. And the first few $100,000 took every ounce of my soul, effort, strength. And then by the time at the end, our last round where we raised $35 million, that took like a week. And I always joked, I was like, where were you people when I needed $700,000? But as your business gets bigger and there's more momentum and things are working, some things get easier, some other things, as we both know, get harder. But so by the end of our 5th birthday, we had 2 million users. Hundreds of thousands of paying customers, and we ended up getting acquired.
So with LearnVest, can you tell us a little bit about what the business model was and what clicked? How did you get up to 2 million? Because a lot of people, start and they just don't know how to get there.
Yeah, I always believe some businesses like Instagram end up with like millions of users like that, right? And even Instagram took a while, right? It took a long time. Every user we got, we worked for. And I think but then they stayed. So that was the big difference, is we were a very sticky platform once you showed up. So we had a daily newsletter where you could start just learning something simple about money. Then we ended up selling a financial plan for $500. So it was like software. You would buy a financial plan, we'd build you a full financial plan, and for $20 a month, you'd keep access to your own financial expert. It's a very novel model. Like the rest of at the time, it like flew in the face of everything that existed. And we were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I was just like, let's make it modern. Let's make it fresh. That way, young families, and we started getting users around the country. We got 22-year-olds. We got 70-year-olds. We got people who had literally no money, negative net worth, to people who had millions of dollars. And it was just people being like, this is more convenient.
Right.
And so, so basically our business models, we would sell a subscription for about $500 per year to a family, and we would do all the financial planning in their household.
Gotcha.
And it was software who did it, but then we had a human who would help answer questions. Then we started selling that to companies. So big companies would come, and for example, like let's just say a Walmart would say, oh, we'd like to buy 50,000 financial plans for our employees. And that just quickly took off.
Gotcha.
And essentially we ended up with the fastest growing financial planning company in the country because we were able to leverage software.
So your company was acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that process? How is that feeling? And what did they see that they absolutely had to have?
So we got acquired March 25th of 2015 for just about $375 million, which I know sounds crazy. And many times I was sitting on the shoes of hearing an entrepreneur, and even if the entrepreneur was like, I sold my company for $2 million, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. So I just want to say that because I sat in these seats and I remember thinking, oh my God, that seems so impossible. What they loved about what we were building was we had the same mission. We really believed in giving families control of their wallets and making families feel stable. And the CEO of Northwestern Mutual is a massive life insurance company. They're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the CEO is a really cool guy. And he was like, if we took your software, and they had 8,000 financial planners, and we could come together, we could deliver 5 million financial plans.
Wow.
And I quickly realized, like, we could go so much faster together. And so I think what they saw in us was a few things. The fact that our software could scale very quickly. The fact that we are a really young engineering culture-based team out of New York that could come in and help do a lot faster. And then our management team was a group of people that they could come in to help modernize some of the things that they were working on. So it really was this amazing marriage. And the CEO and I, literally the day before Thanksgiving, had a handshake. He was like, we should team up. And we chatted for 5 hours. I remember I was supposed to be cooking Thanksgiving for like my new in-laws, and I was like...
Didn't you have a baby then too?
I was also 5 months pregnant on that day. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to call Whole Foods and they're going to deliver food and it's going to be great because I'm busy. And we ended up getting acquired on a Wednesday, and I had our daughter that weekend. And everyone's like, wow, you must have had, like, that was the best week of your life. And I was like, that was the most challenging week of my life. I was being mentally tested, emotionally tested, physically tested. And my husband like almost literally cracked and fell apart because he was like, I don't think we're gonna make it. And I had to be like, you are not allowed to fall apart right now. I was like, you have one job and it is to, shh, well, I just get through this. But no, it was amazing, and actually being pregnant kept it really in perspective because obviously human life is the most important thing, and a business deal is just not nearly as important as the birth of any child. So it was kind of a helpful balance for me as I kept it all together.
And you became Chief Innovation Officer ultimately at a big company. So you went from being an entrepreneur to scaling your business to Chief Innovation Officer at a huge company.
Yep.
What was that like?
Yeah, so again, this probably sounds like alien speak, but going from like a small company where you can like run fast, figure things out, that's a great idea, go do it tomorrow. You get inside a big company, and this is a Fortune 50 company, does about almost, call it 35 billion in revenue, big company, 6,000 employees, and I'm sure you know this very well from your own experience, but you just go into bigger companies and there's red tape and there's all of these very clear processes. So in many ways, doing my job was so much easier. My budget at little LearnVest went from like, call it $20 million a year of budget that I could spend to $700 million of budget. I was like, there were days where I felt like the Wizard of Oz. I was like, and we can do so much more. And I was like, this is almost easier in some capacity because I'm like, can we have 10 people by the end of the week go tackle this problem, and that could happen. On the flip side, as you know, if you wanted to like do some really creative outside of the box thinking, there was just more red tape to get through. And so it was actually, and again, what was amazing about Northwestern Mutual is they wanted to push those boundaries. So they would say, well, let's figure it out. And the team was really nimble. And keep in mind, they really signed up to buy us. So the management team was very on board for this. And then at some point, they put me on the management team, and I sat on the management team of a Fortune 50 company, and that was a great experience. And I learned a lot myself. And one thing I would just say, the most valuable thing that you can do is just actually learn what you're bad at and get real people in your life who will say, you suck at that. Like, really, you're real bad. And I had executive coaches all the way through it, which was an incredible investment in my own career. And I think that's the one thing that I'll just say as a young person is like lean into people who are going to tell you the truth and like tell you this tough stuff, because people who love you don't even tell you the hard things. And like your partner may tell you the hard things, but like not many other people will. And so that growth period for me was really valuable, and I learned a lot of things that I had to get better at. I learned a lot of things that I was really good at that I should do far faster and more. But I do think that personal growth cannot be left out of this conversation because it was probably the most valuable asset that I walked away from.
So I can barely keep up with your energy, including how fast you talk. I'm sort of curious. I'm curious what you're good at. I think I know, but I'm sort of also curious what you think you're bad at, because you have this perfect career path, and we haven't even gotten to half of what you're doing, so I'm just sort of curious.
So a few things. So one thing I am bad at is, I'm bad at a handful of things and like genuinely bad at them. This isn't like I'm very bad at like being smart. So I learned that I didn't always come off as a good listener. And it would be because I'll listen so intently. And then I'll be like, okay, great, so what are we gonna do? And you'd be like, no. And so I learned that I just needed to say, do you feel like I've heard everything? Or what are you not saying? And create the space so that people can be like, I totally disagree with this plan, or I think this is a bad idea. And I really like when people disagree, because I think you get to much better outcomes. And I think that's a really important thing in life, is like listen to the people who disagree. If you surround yourself with everybody that tells you things you're great at, you're never gonna get better, or you're also not gonna find the perfectly best path forward. So that was one. I actually took a listening test and just learned that I'm a strategic listener, and so I get it quickly, but I needed to make sure people knew that I was really paying attention. So that's one. Another thing is I always am creating sense of urgency. I'm like, it's go time all the time. I'm just like, we live in a perpetual state of like, we could do more. And that is, not everyone is just wired that way. And so just reminding people that just because I'm okay at that pace, you don't have to live at that pace. And so giving people that space to just, and it was really just making sure I really understood how I was perceived, because people do their best work around you if they actually can be themselves and their authentic selves. And it doesn't mean everybody has to be relaxed and feel like it's a vacation, but you want people to feel calm and stable and supported. And so also just making sure, so it was just those things of making sure I was saying the things out loud to know that people could feel those ways. I'm impatient, like super impatient.
Really?
And that's a really great trait as somebody who wants to accomplish a lot, but also in big companies, there were times where I'd be like, it's been 4 months, like we could have done that yesterday. And so I had to be more patient at times to be like, you win the battle, you may not win, you win the war, you may not win the battle.
Yeah.
And so just learning like when to use my chips, when not to, those sort of things.
Interesting. So you wrote 2 books also. At what point did you write the books, and what was the message you had to get out?
So the first book, Financially Fearless, was before our company got acquired, and it really was plain English financial planning for America. It was a book that I was like, I wish when I was 24 I could have read it, and it was simple. And I was really proud it was a bestseller, because the goal was, and it is inexpensive, it's on Amazon, and it was on purpose because I just wanted more people to read it. The second book came out this year. It's called Financially Forward, The Future of Your Wallet, and it was kind of a geeky book, but it was really around crypto and Bitcoin and where are things going, what's happening with the future. And money is really interesting and it's speeding up very quickly. And so because I now have the benefit of meeting entrepreneurs every day who are trying to change technology, our wallets, et cetera, it was just a bit of a thesis on where I think our wallets are headed.
So Alexa starts a company, drops out of Harvard Business School, starts a company, writes 2 books, gets acquired, becomes part of a management team of a Fortune 100, and then she decides now she has to start a venture capital firm. So why that at this moment in time?
So I'm now 36 years old, and which I like to think is young. I'm not sure if it is. Most of you are like 12, and like, look, I think I'm now old. But I decided, I was like, I have 35 years of my career left, and I realized that nights and weekends, I was constantly seeking people with ideas and wanting to figure out how to make their path easier. As I said, building LearnVest was not, it was like up, down, sideways. There were nights where I didn't sleep because it was just like sleep was harder because my dreams would be doing work, which is a mean thing that your brain does. And I would wake up and be like, I should just be working if my brain's gonna do it while I'm sleeping. And I was just like, how do I help the entrepreneurs of tomorrow? And I believe we're in the most innovative decade of our lives. And I have a lot of scars from building businesses. And I said, what if I could go find the people of tomorrow and support them and make their path better, help them swing bigger, and we can build some incredible, incredible platforms that are gonna change the future. And one day, my husband looked at me and he goes, Alexa, you're literally doing this nights and weekends. He's like, you light up when you're talking to entrepreneurs. You should do this full time. And I'd already started investing in some really great companies, a handful of big unicorns who have been really successful. And I became those entrepreneurs' red phones. And I realized that this was just such a nice place to go where I could be the player and the coach at the same time, and support people in a way that is really authentic. And somebody once said to me, if you can figure out what you're good at and you can figure out what you love to do, and if you can do it as soon as possible in your career, you will be the most successful. It's just that simple. What are you really good at? What do you love to do? Do it as soon as possible. And it became really obvious that this is an incredible path for me. And so it came out of my mouth one day. I said, it's going to be Inspired Capital. And then I was like, is that name taken? And it wasn't. And I can't believe it wasn't, but we bought it for $6,000. And we launched Inspired Capital earlier this year, and we now invest as a team. And my co-founders are, one of them is the co-founder of Paperless Post. One of them is Penny Pritzker, who's a serial entrepreneur. And we basically brought together just people who are really passionate about entrepreneurs of the future and said, what if you could do it with coaches like us in the trenches with you? You're just gonna go farther faster with less money and be able to accomplish more and change the world faster. And so that's what happened.
You make it seem so easy raising a multi-$100 million venture fund. She's actually raised one of the largest funds led by a female founder in the country. So, we're very proud of that.
Thank you.
How was the fundraising process?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, I feel like if you're doing something you really believe in, I think one thing that I admire about 15-year-olds today is people, like, we have a whole generation behind us that is just so authentic to who they are. They're like, this is who I am. And I think definitely my generation, like, it took a while to be like, this is who I am, right? I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to. Mm-hmm. And so when you are out there and talking about something that you love so much that is so authentic to who you are, and again, what do I love to do? I love to build businesses. I love to hear big, wild ideas and bring them down to practical scope and say, let's go accomplish it. I love strategy all day long. I can do strategy all day long. Play chess. How are we gonna do that faster and smarter? And what I realized was talking about this vision, this mission, I think people got on board because, and we ended up oversubscribed and all this great stuff, because people, I think, really, really recognize that this is something that is authentic to us. It'd be totally different if you were asking me to like run a baseball league. Like, probably not.
I'm sure
gonna
you
do
could
it.
do it. I'm sure you could do it.
I don't know. I mean, I confuse the terms. My husband was like, "Can you name 10 baseball teams?" I was like, "No." But it just this oozes out of my DNA in a way that is very real. So there's a quote, and I'm sure you all have heard it: "If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life." I don't agree with that one. I agree with this one. If you love what you do, you'll work every day of your life with no boundaries, and your feelings will get hurt because you will take it personally. But that is me, which is like I care so much, and I'm all in, and often 7 days a week I'm working, but it doesn't feel like work because I love it so much.
So she showed me her phone. She had 25,000 emails she hadn't answered. So I saw that.
If anybody wants to start a new personal CRM around managing all your contacts and all of the things that I think that's $1 billion idea, and I would love to talk to you.
I agree. So talk to us about one or two of your investments, what you spotted in them, what you look for, and why you're so excited about them.
Sure. So there's a company that we just announced called RHO, and it's a small business bank. And essentially, there's a really big bank that we had invested in when I was at Northwestern Mutual called Chime. And what Chime did was basically just made a totally modern bank, all mobile, easy, super digital, and designed for the next generation. But surprise, everybody loves a super convenient bank and now has 5 million users or 3 million or something massive. So this does the same thing for small businesses, and it just makes it easy. And for a small business owner, your QuickBooks is built in, and the entrepreneurs just approached it in the right technological way, and we said, that's a big idea. So we invested in Row, and I'm really proud of that one. We invested in a company called Chief, which is gonna come to DC soon.
Great.
And what Chief did was it said, how do we get women to the top of companies? And what Chief does is it's a subscription service where a company can pay or the individual can pay for a few $1,000s. Remember when I talked about the executive coaching I got? Well, it was incredibly expensive. It was $5,000 a month, so per year, sometimes I would spend $30,000 on executive coaching. If you're the CEO, somebody is willing to invest in that, but that's crazy, and I could obviously never afford that myself. And so we said more and more people are recognizing that they're corporate athletes. Like being a leader of a big company is just like anything else in life. You kind of have to train for it. You got to get better. You got to know, like, what are you good at? What are you bad at? I was an athlete, and so I really believed in somebody critiquing, giving me feedback. I do a platform, so it's like I would do a dive and I'd get out of the water and my coach would be like, here's what went wrong, here's what was great. So Chief is bringing that exact same service to women across corporate America. And they have 1,500 members in New York City, massive revenue growth, 8,000 women on a wait list around the country, and they're going to other cities, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea was, how do we give more and more women the executive coaching and tools to get to the top of companies so we actually can get it to be 50-50, which is a big radical idea, or just obvious that it should happen. Right. And so Chief was a great company, and Ken Chanel, former CEO of Amex, took the board seat. I took the other one. And yeah, so again, all different types of companies of all different shapes and sizes, early stage seed or Series A. We tend to like a really big tech focus. Chief was kind of an anomaly because they're building all their tech right now.
And talk to us about what you look for in entrepreneurs.
It's the most important question. So what we like to see in entrepreneurs, and it's not something you can fake, it's a relentless passion for something. And I always tell people, if you don't like food, don't make a food app. If you don't love fashion, let's not start a retail company. Because it is something where it's oozing out of you in a way where it's almost unstoppable. And I used to joke, I'm like, I didn't run LearnVest, LearnVest ran me. Where the idea, I was just like almost so committed that I was showing up every day for this thing because it was so much bigger than anything I could ever have cared about. And so we look for founder market fit, where it's just some reason why that founder is unique to go build that idea. We look for somebody with real thick skin. Like somebody once asked me, and I know you probably know this well from being an entrepreneur, it's not always, I mean, most of the times it's not fun, right? Like we make it very glamorous to be an entrepreneur. We sit up here and we're just like, isn't this so amazing? it's brutal. I mean, there are days where so many things go wrong on one day that you cannot breathe. You're like, oh gosh, how do I fix all these issues? And so we look for people who have the staying power, who will not take no for an answer, who will, as things get harder, they get better. That's an important one.
Right.
As things get harder, you wake up. Stress wakes them up. And then I would say, you want some sort of charisma, and that doesn't have to be like a typical EQ. You're, the most charming in the room, but you've got to be somebody who can woo people to come join you. Investors, you need to be able to convince, people. My management team most of them were 10 to 15 years older than me. I would be 25, they were 45. And I'd be like, here's why you're gonna come believe in my crazy idea. And you have to convince people who pay their families, to put food on the table to be able to show up. And so some sort of woo mechanism where they can articulate their idea and in a way where people are compelled to come join them. So that's kind of what we look for. And we like to get to know entrepreneurs early. So if you have an idea, right now, come chat with us well before. And we kind of track you and we kind of follow and we watch how you execute and get things done. And we like to see people who just get things done.
And then you have a podcast, so can you talk a little bit about that? Because
Sure.
I think you should all listen.
Yeah. So Inc. magazine, which I'm sure you guys have all heard of, I run their podcast called The Founders Project with Alexa von Tobel. It's really fun. So once a week, I get to take any CEO in the country, any founder, and we've done everybody from Bobby Brown to the CEO of Sweetgreens to, truly all shapes and sizes. We're working on getting, you name it, great company from Framebridge to Peloton to, we're working on Airbnb. But what's really exciting about it is we just say, how'd you do it? But most importantly, what do you do every day? What do you eat every day? How do you get out of bed? How do you handle stress? What's your favorite interview question? And we really get into the meat of what makes them make the business work. And it's just really fun because I've been the founder and sometimes they've never been asked some of these questions and so they're kind of figuring it out. So it's just a really fun thing to do.
Do you have any favorite interviews that we should listen to?
That's so good. I have so many. Well, a few things. Bobby Brown was really fun because she was really, early at, she built her business in the 90s and sold it. And we think of her as being like an entrepreneur today, but that was a long time ago. And her stories are really fun and she doesn't hold back anything. There's a great company called Carta, C-A-R-T-A, and it's really creating the private New York Stock Exchange for companies that are private, meaning still not publicly held, and it's a very big company. His name's Henry Ward. He was just a really cool founder because he ended up stumbling into a multi-billion-dollar business. Has anyone heard of the company Airtable? That CEO, his name's Howie, and he's just a really differentiated thinker. He brought up a great point, which is we often use these war analogies where it's we're gonna crush the other side. And he's like, why can't we use healthy grow analogies? We're gonna grow trees everywhere. And it made me realize when we talk about competition, it's it's very violent as opposed to just growing and making the world better. And it just kind of changed my own thinking around that, which I loved. So it's very, very fun. Women, men, all shapes and sizes, all ages, and it is just a pleasure. So I do it once a week for an hour.
So I'm going to ask another question, last question, and think about your questions for Alexa. So 90-year-old Alexa.
Yep.
What else is there to do?
That's such a great question. 90-year-old Alexa. I think what I realized right now is I really believe the East Coast should have a brand like a Sequoia. I do. When I was young and I was building my business, I kept saying, why do I have to fly to the West Coast? It made no sense to me. I was like, the East Coast of this country is pretty special. New York City happens to be a really great city. It's an important capital of the whole planet. Yet it was still you get on planes and you fly to the West Coast. And the top of my 10-year business plan says entrepreneurs fly east. And I think that we can build an incredibly passionate, really hardworking firm that is really committed for the entrepreneurs of tomorrow who want to swing really big. And I think that's the thing I'm most focused on, because it was so personal to me, which was like, why can't I have my investors be in my backyard?
Right.
Why can't they come to my board meetings in person? It was those sort of things. And so that's what we want to build.
Oh, love it.
That's what I'm focused on. That and like healthy, well-rounded children. I have 3 children. And
Or under the age of 5.
yeah, which is, I have a 4.5, 1.5, half. Which is I think actually puts it all into perspective every day. And it's so much fun, so.
Well, I've loved our conversation. I know we're going to have a lot of questions. I'm sure that you feel like I do. How does she do it all? But
She's my inspiration, to be
you're
perfectly
sweet.
honest.
You're
I
sweet.
love her so much.
You're sweet. Thank you. So questions?
And don't be shy, all shapes and sizes.
I think
any
we have
questions.
microphones.
Right there.
Yep.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. Quick question about LearnVest and founding it. You weren't a software engineer, is what I'm gathering. So question about how you pitched the idea versus the product. Did you find engineers? Did you have to learn some of the engineering? I think a lot of the business ideas now are based in these software components, but a lot of us don't have necessarily the background. So curious how you manage that.
Yep, so when I started LearnVest, to be crystal clear, I was like decent at business, right? I was 20, I mean, whatever you can possibly know as like a young kid with no real job yet. I was not an engineer, and essentially what I did is, you can pretty much learn anything if you want to. Like the internet now is incredible. So first, I was not a certified financial planner, which we ended up building financial planning software. So I became a certified financial planner. I actually had to take a test last night at 11 p.m., literally in my hotel room to like keep my certification alive. I was like, this is so hard.
I'm not sure if you still need that.
I know, but it was so hard to pass. I'm never losing it. I was like, I'm never taking that test again. So I became a certified financial planner. I ended up becoming, really, I was like our chief product officer. I used to take pieces of paper and I would draw out, here's exactly what I want, here's what it should do, and then they would literally translate it into real code and real pixels. And through the process, you know, I'm definitely not an engineer, I cannot write code, but I learned enough to know the questions to ask to make sure we were making decent decisions, and I made lots of the mistakes. So to be crystal clear, like, you know, you don't get there like without any single, you know, zigzag. So you can learn a lot. You can roll your sleeves up and, you know, hire people you trust, and as I said, and give people the space to tell you the truth. They can be like, that's not gonna work. And you have to listen to them and know when like you can push them a bit or when it's like truly a bad idea. And just, one thing that I was just saying, our firm, Inspired Capital, I've worked with all of them, maximum 20 years, like shortest like 5 years. So I just brought back the smartest and the best people I'd ever worked with because we already have that relationship and we can go build something. So I love to stay working with the people that I love because that trust is so invaluable. What else?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. How do you get the best out of your team?
I think you get the best out of your team when they feel like they can be themselves, when they feel truly empowered, when you, again, we kind of do this mental sparring where we're asking ourselves, is that the right idea? Is that not? And we call it psychological safety, where it's like, and also it's just like we're all adults. If you need to leave, go. If you have to take a trip, take a trip. Like we hire highly wired, hardworking, in it for the right reasons people, and then we treat them exceptionally well. And we like love to be together. There's a reason why most of the people I've worked with have stayed with us, 10 years, 11 years later. So I think it's feeling empowered. When you show up to work as who you are, like your authentic self, you actually love your job more. Happy people do good work. They do better work. And in fact, there's a lot of science behind this where if you like create like a highly stressful environment, people do high productivity for a short period of time. But if you're looking about volumes of quality work over long periods of time, happy people do much better work. So I think that's a pretty important thing to do.
Sounds like it came from the happiness lab.
I'm telling you, the happiness lab. I told my mom, I'm like, look, it worked out. What else? Go ahead.
So I found it really interesting that you said both the things that you were best at and some of the things that you felt you weren't as strong at were actually both somewhere around the soft skills. The listening or making people feel heard being the challenge, but also being able to get buy-in and being able to articulate your vision being something you're great at. And I think that that's something that's so interesting where entrepreneurs are so fixated on the product and on the business and that sometimes they don't think about those other components. How do you support the companies that you're working with around those slightly more ephemeral things that don't seem like the thing I'm going to spend time on to get better at right now, but that makes such a difference in the long haul?
I mean, I think what we're really saying is like people skills, EQ, social skills are incredibly valuable at getting people to do great work. And so, first of all, I mean, one of the challenges is, you know, you can get better at your communication skills. And one thing that's worth saying, I hated public speaking. If you would have grabbed me at like 19, like I once ran for office in college and literally my mouth dried up and I couldn't speak. And I remember being like, what is happening? And I was basically so stressed out that I just couldn't utter words, which is not a productive way to run for office.
And you fixed that.
Yeah, and just like did more of it over and over and over and over. I have now gone on television, 400 times. And I used to get super stressed. Now I sleep perfectly through the night. I wake up, it's no big deal, I move on. You can get good at things if you just keep practicing. And I think there's this great book, Growth Mindset. I don't know if anybody's heard it, but it's about like raising children to learn that it's not like what you're born with. You can get so much better over time. Because if you feel like you have a fixed mindset, like either I have it or I don't, like my EQ is only this strong, it's not this strong. If you practice anything, you can get much better. You may not be like the Olympic athlete of it, but you can get much better. And so one, we tend to like people who have more of a growth mindset because it's a learning mindset. And if you feel like you're defeated before you show up, well, clearly you're not going to accomplish anything. And I think really like the core of this is like a deep belief in your ability to learn, ability to get better, an incredible work ethic. I think that is invaluable to anyone in this room. You can pretty much achieve anything if you want to, which is why I really mean it when I say I'm very ordinary. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I was born in Kentucky. My parents are from Indiana. It wasn't like I grew up in New York City with everything on the right side of the fence. Like it was like incredible amounts of hard work and earnest work. And I think if you put your head down, you can accomplish a lot of things. So we look for people who can grow, who can learn, who will take feedback. People who won't take feedback, you know that, I mean, it's like, can't do much with somebody who won't listen. And so it is really, that's what we look for. But I think that's a fantastic question, which is we're looking for people with some of that foundation who also will get better. And often if you track somebody, so back to I like to track entrepreneurs, if you track somebody from January to today and you watch them go like this, you kind of know, you're like, this is a high growth potential person. Like they're gonna get better as things get harder, and that's what we look for. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Suchitam from Cambodia. I'm really inspired by your business experience. I also want to know how can you kickstart your business and get a lot of users to buy in your concept, because I also run a platform in Cambodia and in other countries as well, but I feel that it's difficult to get a user to maintain user in your business and get more, and it would be great that you can share that. Yeah,
so
please.
Getting users is the hardest part of anything. I mean, you know this, selling things, getting people to buy products, like parting with money is a hard thing to do. And so this came from this great guy, Ben Horowitz. He wrote a book, The Hard Things About Hard Things. If you're an entrepreneur, you should read it. He just came on my podcast last week. And he has this great quote, which is like, and again, back to like the violent culture where we always use examples around bullets, but he was like, there's no such thing as a silver bullet. You need tons of lead bullets. So when you're going out and getting customers, you need every strategy working. PR, press, word of mouth. The product has to be so good that people share it with everybody. The best thing that gets users is a great product, something that stands out. And there's a book that Seth Godin wrote called The Purple Cow. If you haven't heard of it, you should. It's a great product book, and this concept is super simple. If you saw a purple cow, you would tell everybody about it because you'd be like, this was wild and very different. Your product should be that good. And I was just right before I came here, I was with the CEO of Rothy's, the shoes that you can wash and they're good for the environment. Like, that was an innovative shoe. And as a result, people talk about it and people share it. And as a result, her business is doing well. Or I was just with the CEO of Swell Bottle. She was like, let's get rid of cups and let's make it so that everybody walks around with a bottle. It's not a crazy, wild idea. It was just she did it well at a time when the world made sense and people share it and talk about it and gift it and give it away. And so your best way to get more users is have your product stand out and make sense for what's happening at the time. What else? Go ahead. Yep, you.
Hi, so my name is Maria and I'm the founder and CEO of York Times and at present Halcyon fellow as well right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for everything that you said. It was so relatable that I have two fellows sitting on both the sides and both whispered in my ear and said that she's so like me and she's talking about us, and I was like, wow, both of them have completely different personalities, but you're so relatable, which is brilliant.
Thank you.
So my question was, at a very early age and starting as a young founder, human resource management is something that we are not born with, and it's a skill that hones over time period. But as you start your own company without a lot of experience, it's at that stage, the value of the company is as good as the team that is working on it.
Yeah.
And so what was that journey like for you, and understanding, getting there, attracting the dynamic team that would get you to the million user?
Yep, so and again, anyone who's ever run a business, the hardest thing about building a company is people, every time. It is the hardest. As you get bigger, it gets harder. And just also, it's a really great skill for being a mother because it's about trying to get people to do what you need them to do. And I really do believe it's made me a more patient mom. And it's maybe why I'm able to juggle 3 little kids. It's just like I've had a dashboard where so much has been thrown at me, and I've just learned to be like, we'll figure it out, we'll get it done. We'll take it one day at a time, we'll take it in stride, and I don't get too flustered too often. So I would say, but I did not start this way. That's a really important thing to say. At 24, the first time somebody quit, I'm pretty sure I cried. I'm pretty sure the first time I had to fire somebody, I could not get the words out of my mouth. And it was an abysmal situation. And you just get better at it. And so my strategy for talent, though, is hire people smarter than you. You have to be confident enough. What's hard as a young CEO is you want to be right, because deep in your heart, you're like, I'm so young, I've got to prove to everybody I'm so good. And it's actually the opposite. You want to prove to everybody that you are smart enough to hire people smarter than you and listen to them. And so I was really lucky, and it didn't always go perfectly, but I was able to hire incredibly talented people that were definitely more capable at all things, especially product, especially engineering, especially financials, especially legal and compliance. And then I would listen to them, and I would say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Tell me how fast I can do it. And there were times where we would battle, but we created the trust. And I'm really proud to say that my management team at our acquisition, all the way to 3 years later, almost 100% of them were there, minus one person of 8. And so that was pretty special to me, made me really proud that we all got through the acquisition together and we went through it all. And then I'm working with a few of them in other things. So the takeaway is hire people that are even smarter than you are. That actually shows that you're capable. And it's not that you have to have all the right answers. It's actually that you listen to others, that you accomplish more. But that's a hard switch to do when you've never done it before.
Yeah, but just a second question follow. So in Inspire Capital and the investments that you're doing, is this one of the things, hiring smarter people and making that hard switch, something that you help the founders do, or hone these skills as you are on the board as well?
Yeah, so we use climbing Kilimanjaro as an example. If you're going to climb Kilimanjaro, the literal best way to do it is ask somebody who just did it, how they packed, how they trained, what they took, what they wore, what's in their knapsack, etc. And so I am that red phone to entrepreneurs. And often I'm the person who's like, do you and your co-founder need to break up? Because it sounds like it's not going well. Like, I can just get to the hard question. Or, do you really think your head of sales is good enough? And they know it. And I can ask the question, and they're like, you're right, my head of sales isn't good enough. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm right. I'm just asking the questions. And they're like, my head of sales isn't good enough. And it's being able to have the safe space to say those out loud. And the only reason I got better at this is I had a board member who had sold a company for $1 billion, who was brilliant and used to just be like, I see a problem. And I'd be like, no, I don't have that problem. And then like a month later, I'd had that exact problem. And I just learned to lean into him to be like, what else am I missing? Tell me. And just rather than being like, I have it all figured out, I'd be like, what don't I have figured out? And we used to start board meetings, not with the show and tell of what we did well. He was like, start within seconds of the board meeting starting. What are your biggest issues? And if you don't accomplish them, you don't win. It's just a different mindset, lean into the pain. And I actually say I want to write a book called Lean Into the Pain. Because that's what great entrepreneurs do. You lean into your real problems.
Great.
Not avoid them like an ostrich.
I think we have time for one more question.
It's more fun to avoid them, trust me, but solving them, if you can build the emotional DNA to do it, you'll get really good.
So what's your most spectacular failure that you thank a higher power for every day?
So there's a handful, but I will say this was a moment this is going to sound frivolous, but it has a narrative. So when I was a junior in high school, I was volleyball captain, and by the way, so I'm 5'3", not a good volleyball player, like really good team builder, and the coach literally was like, we don't think you should be on the volleyball team anymore. You should be on the diving team. And I remember being like, but no, I don't want, they've asked me to do the diving team over and over. No thanks, I want to be on the volleyball team. And they were like, you're not allowed to be on the volleyball team because you have to be on the diving team. And I remember being like devastated. And so I was like, fine, I'll go to one practice. And then the districts were the next day. And I was like, fine, I'll go to one meet, and I won districts. And in that moment, I was devastated. Somebody was like, you're decent at this, but you may be great at that. And it taught me, and I know it sounds super frivolous, but it was about somebody basically being like, you want to do this, but you're not going to be good at it. You're going to be better at something else. And I think many times in life, like we set our mind on, and this is not like a narrative on, there's lots of jobs that you kind of feel like you should go do that you're never going to be your best at. And that goes back to that narrative of like, figure out what you're going to be the best at and that you love, and you will literally win in your career. And that for me was just a really weird time because I was so devastated. Basically, I was being kicked off a team because they were like, you're average and you can be great somewhere else. And it became this important narrative of my life where like, there's a lot of jobs right now where I would be on the team and I'd just be average. But this is my lane. And when I'm in it, I get to be exceptional. And I ended up diving at Harvard undergrad. I dove platform. I got 9th in the state at my first ever meet a month after being a diver. And like, it was just something that it came natural to me. And so it's like figuring out where you are natural, where you are authentic, where you are not like swimming against your own wirings, because you'll be great. And so anyways, it was an important lesson. And I remember I came home, like I thought my like life was over because I was like so in love with volleyball. And then I realized actually like somebody telling you the hard things in life actually makes you better. And so it's been an important kind of deep narrative.
I love how authentic Alexa is, and please join me in thanking her for coming.